We're gonna go into every single lift and movement that you can test specific to football, and we're gonna start right now. Now, one of the best things about football is that there's crazy combines. And when we look at combines, we can predict athlete performance for the most part. Okay, yes, there's a lot of athletes. Insert Tom Brady footage of him running a 40 as slow as possible and then becoming the greatest quarterback in the history of the game. For sure, there's a lot of athletes that don't do the best as far as testing is concerned with physical qualities, but they can still play the game. But for the majority of football players, the reason why we have combines and the reason why we have those tests is to use those tests to then predict how well we can actually see players perform. And I also believe there's some evidence to support that those combines and those tests, those are great ways to just keep individuals in the weight room, to keep them focused on that long-term goal, to keep them continuously pushing themselves physically and mentally through that long off season so that they get into the fall and they're in very good shape. And so the big factor becomes, we start to have these discussions of, why are we testing something like the bench press? Is that actually an effective test? Why are we testing something like the 40? Is that an effective test? And so if we can analyze those things, we can see, what are they testing? What is it actually showing us as a coach or as an individual? And does it transfer to the game? So we're gonna break down all of those key tests that you guys can do. I've actually got our garage strength testing benchmarks right here. We're gonna go through the field strength and we're gonna go through strength and power, which is where we sort of lump in those offensive and defensive linemen. We're gonna provide those specific tests so that you guys can implement them and optimize your overall performance in the season. Okay, so the first two tests that we want to focus on is improving and reflecting max velocity. So what would max velocity be? Let's say we are a individual who has a breakaway touchdown, okay? Or we have to run someone down at full speed. That is max velocity. What's your top end speed as a football player? Now, to be totally fair, you don't often achieve top end speed. You might achieve that on kick return. You might do that on special teams quite a bit more than you would in a regular play, but top end speed also shows us what is your ability to get to top end speed, okay? So to achieve acceleration, and how well or how twitchy are you as an individual? And those two main tests that you can use for football to actually identify that max velocity would be, one, testing the 40-yard dash. The 40-yard dash will indeed show you max velocity for a specific athlete. Two, you want to be testing single leg squats. You should be using a single leg squat stand that is available at garagestrength.com, which is stable, it's sturdy, and it's been tested with weights over 500 pounds. Okay, so if you can use single leg squats and you can do specific tests like triples or doubles, you can use a sturdy garage strength single leg pad and roller to do that testing safely, and then that's gonna help predict max velocity when performed along with testing for a 40-yard dash. Now, these tests will show you what that individual is capable of, but they won't show you how well they play the game. That's up to you as a football coach. Now let's get into the next specific testing protocol. And that takes us into that lower body impulse, okay? So lower body impulse is gonna show us what type of power output or what type of force production can an athlete demonstrate in a very short period of time. And the reason why this is so applicable to a sport like football is that everything is time-based. Okay, so when you snap the ball, how quickly can you come off the line? And you can even see, I've got videos standing on the sideline of Michigan Penn State game and seeing the hats make contact at about 0.4 to 0.5 seconds. So if we can increase force in that half second, then that increases impulse expression. That's why it is such a key indicator for performance on the gridiron. Okay, so we want to be testing impulse expression based off of two specific movement patterns, and that's going to be one, a clean. So when we're demonstrating a clean, or when we're actually using a clean, we have to produce a large amount of force in a short period of time. You only have a designated period of pulling, okay? Then you have to get under it, you have to stand that up as quickly as possible. So the clean is a fantastic exercise to use to demonstrate and test impulse expression. The second key exercise would be vertical jump. Vertical jump will also show you how well the athlete does a counter movement. How quickly do they get out of that counter movement? How high can they jump? And then when they ground, you can also get some readings off of their grounding ability. But the most important factor there is how high can they jump and how much force can they produce in that short period of time. That's going to play a major role in what they're going to be doing out on the football field. That's going to take us into the next group of testing. Now we want to get into upper body impulse. So upper body impulse might show us how quickly somebody can throw a stiff arm, how quickly somebody can actually block if they're an offensive lineman, or swim somebody, or do defensive moves, right? So these tests will play a major role in how quickly they can implement technique that they're using in their designated position. Okay, so for upper body impulse, we're going to be looking at behind the neck jerks. If you don't have access to jerk boxes, you can do behind the neck push presses. This is a great test that will show how well the athlete can demonstrate hip extension into their upper body. Okay, so you can do a test with the behind the neck jerk or behind the neck push presses. And then you can also do that with a medicine ball throw. The medicine ball throw done from a seated position is going to show you how rapidly the individual can accelerate a med ball and how far they can accelerate that. That's where impulse comes into play. If they can't throw that as far, they can't apply as much force in a short period of time. Okay, so those are two tremendous tests that will demonstrate upper body impulse. And then finally, that last key area that we should be testing is going to be absolute strength. Okay, so we need to be testing specifically absolute strength. There is an argument that we should be focusing as well on chaos coordination or transient speed, and that would involve tests like the 5-10-5, 100%. Tests that, like the shuttle, the L drill, those are fantastic tests that pretty much every single football player should be doing. Those are also sort of, I would still probably keep the 5-10-5 as a primary test for overall transient speed. But if we're going back to that absolute strength numbers, we want to be focusing on two major absolute strength exercises, and that's going to be the back squat and a bench press. And if we can get an athlete, I'm thinking about right now, there's a D tackle at Penn State that just hit a back squat, ass to grass, 600 for a set of 4. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal absolute strength. And the reason why we would test this is, one, we can see how well, in this case, a defensive lineman that I just provided, how well are they doing in the trenches? Can they handle that big time impact? And in football, you have an opposing force here and an opposing force here. They're meeting, they're colliding. There's a large amount of energy. And if you have a fast impulse expression supplemented by a large absolute strength reservoir, that plays a major role in winning the battle. Okay, so we've got to think about that. And it's the same thing with bench press. If we're fast here with the stiff arm and then somebody else hits us and we have the reservoir of absolute strength from the bench press, it can transfer very, very well over onto the football field. Now, it doesn't mean it's the end all be all, but it's something that should be tested. So a back squat test is 100% something that you should be testing along with that bench press. Okay, so let's get into focusing on those absolute strength numbers, figuring out those tests from a single or from a triple, something along those lines, and then how well does that individual athlete do that? And then the big factor is that as coaches, we can look at impulse expression, we can look at max velocity, we can look at that absolute strength, and we can see where is this individual lacking. Okay, they have a huge 600 back squat for 4, huge reservoir of absolute strength, but they struggle with impulse, okay? So then the catering needs to go to impulse training. And that's the big factor around all of these tests. That's the big factor around why we should be doing tests specifically for football, is that it helps us designate problem areas for the players, and it helps us designate even positional problems that might be arising based off of their overall combine performance. So these are things that we go deep into in our Garage Strength program design, but most importantly, these are things that we train specifically in our app, Peak Strength. If you guys need help with your training and you need help with general periodization, you don't know how to set up a leg power day, an upper body power day, you don't know how to execute an athlete day, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, and you can download Peak Strength today for 7 free days of training. And in those 7 free days, you're gonna get 5 free workouts that are gonna help you get access to those freak-based protocols. That's the big aspect behind Peak Strength, is that you can go in and you can even click on, I want to train like an offensive lineman, I want to train like a wide receiver, I want to train like a quarterback, depending upon your specific position. And then it's going to give you programs designed to help you perform at a higher level and hopefully achieve those big time dreams. Because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.